Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 33 of Nutanix Weekly. That's right, it's the Larry Bird episode. We were just joking about that before we hit record. People in my generation just automatically think 33 equals Larry Bird, unless you grew up where I grew up, and 33 also equals a race car driver named Harry Gant in the world of NASCAR, which I'm sure everybody else is like, just like Harvey is right now, shaking their head going, why did he even bring that up? I don't know, but we're going to move on anyway. Harvey Green's with me. Harvey and I, last week at a conference, we're heading to Philadelphia for EduCalls to be with the Nutanix and Citrix folks. Harvey, how's it going?
I am doing well. How are you?
Your wife mad about travel and stuff already? You got 2 weeks in a
row? Only when I'm gone. So right now I'm safe and not so much tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, speaking of traveling, we got Jaira Cox with us as always. Jaira, I was saying before we hit record how grateful I was for you to jump on because you're always so knowledgeable. And, you know, I talk to people as I'm out and about and they talk about how much value you add to all this. So thank you in public here.
My pleasure, man. This is a lot of fun. Thank y'all for letting me do it.
Speaking of traveling, you still have a bunch of moving boxes behind you.
It's a process.
I think it's not a real thing. He just did this to make us feel all nervous and stuff.
Yep. So I don't know if we've even talked about that on the show. So I'm in the process of packing up in Charlotte, moving to the Raleigh area. I'm sure a little down the road relocation. So we're in the process of right now we're in that phase where you can get like a few minutes notice and it's like, leave your house for a showing, let somebody else come wander around your house, unsupervised. It's great. Let me tell you.
So I can see what I see there. Is that a basement or is that like your main living room?
I'm not sure which of those is worse. No, this is just my office. It's just one of the bedrooms in the house here.
Yeah. Okay.
And it looks like a wreck. So I'm trying to think what would be worse for it to be like a basement or a living room. It's terrible. I actually have a sign on the door like disclaiming like, you're allowed to look in here, but like don't judge me by the mess.
Yeah, I just imagine in my world historically, like somebody opens the door like, oh my goodness, what is this computer troll that lives in here? And they just shut the door.
And this is mostly cleaned out. I have a lot of stuff in storage.
Well, do you have like a server? You have a server rack and all the other IT madness. People are like,
we're thinning out. We're down to a Mac Mini, a NAS, and a couple of desktops that mostly get me by.
When I sold my house before the last one, in my laundry room, I had put a shelf, and I literally had 12 little mini servers because I used to teach workshops out of my house, running on the. In my laundry room at any point in time. I turn them all on. Sound like a airplane was going to take off in there for a little while.
Well, so yeah, our house is a couple of years old, so it has that kind of pre-built wiring stuff, and there's a little plastic wiring thing in the laundry room, and my firewall doesn't fit in it, so it's just bolted onto the side to the wall next to it. It looks great, let me tell you. Yeah. It's very aesthetic.
That's exactly right. I had a Dell checkpoint router mounted to the wall in my laundry room, and I'm sure people came in and thought it was some kind of magical AV solution or something. I don't know. I charged extra for that. All right. So we were chit-chatting as we got started here, and we realized that there's a part 2 of the Azure clusters, Nutanix clusters on Azure that we never got to or never finished from a couple weeks ago. So I don't know how in the world we go about possibly recapping what we covered so far, other than to say, if you're not familiar with, it's currently in pre-release, right? Is it live or is it not live at this point?
It's in preview. Preview. Yeah. That's
what I meant. Preview. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. Go back and listen to part 1. We talked about what Nutanix is doing. We're calling it clusters still, right? Are we calling it clusters? Is that the right way to address it?
It would be, clusters on Azure.
Which is essentially Nutanix AOS, the operating system, on top of Nutanix Acropolis hypervisor, on top of Azure Compute physical bare metal resources in various Azure, Microsoft Azure data centers, and more to come, right?
I think 100% all true. Yeah, that all sounded right to me. About
good job.
A way to use cloud providers offering bare metal instances, hardware as a service. To form Nutanix clusters and give you another leg in your, hybrid multi-cloud deployment.
So, Jaira, you had a action item from the last one. Do you remember what it was?
No, but I think you're about to remind me.
Well, I don't think you officially had it, so don't feel like you had to have an answer. But when I say it, you guys are both going to go, "Oh yeah, we meant to figure that out." We were. I still have the question: do I get the Windows Client OS, aka Windows 10, Windows 11 entitlements if I run in Azure, but not directly on native Azure, but I run on top of something like Nutanix? Do I get the multi-session Windows 10, Windows 11? Do I get the subscription benefits of subscription OS versus having to bring my own?
Got it. Yeah. I think I said I'll check onto that just to be polite for the recording, but I don't even know where I'd go to get that answer for you, buddy. I mean, maybe somebody with an @Microsoft.com email address.
Man, I can tell you, I've been asking those @Microsoft guys forever, and they never know the answer to that one. It's like, to me, it's mainstream. One of the top things we need to know if we're going to move our desktop and app workloads into Azure is that, do I get those benefits if I put it on top of other things? They're still getting the Azure compute. You think the answer would be yes, all things driving Azure consumption, but I just don't know.
So I'm going to go with no. And the reason why I'm giving my qualified no is because the only place that you can get Windows 10 multi-session is in the Azure Gallery, which you would not be using if you're using clusters.
Now, is that a EULA enforced thing, or technically the only thing that'll work with Windows 10 multi-session and Azure is from the gallery?
It is the only way you can get the actual ISO image to install multi-session is out of the gallery.
Is that one of the where there's a will, there's a way kind of things?
I mean, I'm guessing after you have the ISO, you can do whatever you want with it, but that would be EULA enforced.
Maybe not. I don't know. I still want
the answer. Andy, this slope is not that slippery.
Well, you can tell I want the answer to be yes.
Oh, I know you do.
A whole nother world of opportunity.
I mean, so the answer is, if there's a will, there's a way, but that would not be a supported way. How about that?
Oh, hello. Yes. Licensing police. Yes. This podcast right here.
Well, I don't know if he meant that in terms of licensing support or technical support or both.
The answer is no, unless your name is Andy, and then the answer is
still no.
Slippery.
I get it. I just want it to be yes. I think it helps everybody involved if the answer is yes, as long as it's in Azure. And you have this whole antitrust monopoly type thing from way back when. I don't know how you can say you can do it in our data center on our stuff, but not in our data center on somebody else's stuff on top of our stuff. I'm like, what? At some point, when does it become right and when does it become wrong?
Well, I mean, Microsoft in 2021 would never lose that antitrust lawsuit in today's climate, right? Like, any tech company worth, more than my house does way more non-competitive things, way more antitrust things today, right? From lockdown browsers to email clients to, mailing lists to you can't do that in our OS. Like, it's almost, I think it's almost funny to think back and say, wait, so they lost that because they just included IE with a Windows build in a world where a 30 megabyte download took all night and you hoped you didn't get a call.
Yeah. Yes. It was exactly the same for, you type something into Chrome and you get results from Google, right? Yeah. That's not a huge surprise, but for some reason, people didn't like that.
Well, I equate it to the old world enough for this, where you would buy an aftermarket radio and put it in your car. You can't do that anymore, I don't think, because the cars have all these very highly integrated radios. Do the radio companies sue Toyota because you can't put one of their radios anymore? Or
so that's actually an interesting topic, Andy, because that's another situation of where there's a will, there's a way. You can get that aftermarket radio in there. It's just they can't account for what your dash looks like after that,
right?
Or lack thereof.
Well, and that's kind of my point here too, is what makes it nice and all the great things that could come with the ability to have this run on top of non-native Azure, but still Azure. I mean, it's a win for, I think, everybody. I don't know that Microsoft loses. they get more consumption. If that happens, I think, well, maybe not the multi-session thing. That's counter, maybe, but they get the workloads.
Yep.
All right. Well, nonetheless, I've got on the screen here, our listeners can't, but our viewers eventually will be able to see what we're talking about. I think where we left off was network and storage architecture.
Yep.
I
just got to say, Andy, before we jump into that, it's very nice to have you back because I can't play devil's advocate nearly as well as you do.
I agree. I listened to it and you guys do a great job, but I'm
lacking a little something.
Nice way of saying you guys suck.
No, I just have a way of being an ass so that I challenge I challenge the concepts. It still come off hopefully a little likable. Not a lot likable, a little likable.
Gotta love it.
You guys do a great job without me. But I love doing it, and hopefully it comes across that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's very good actually to have that challenge built in. I enjoy it, as you can tell because I'm still here, right? Andy is talking, but I cannot hear him. Is that me? Or
nope.
Is that Andy?
I lost him too.
That is Andy.
Drop a marker here for the edits that
right
probably don't happen.
We still have his screen. I can see you, but I cannot hear you. Yes, hi. Hello. We're waving at him for those of you in podcast space. That,
there you go. Way to paint a word picture, Harvey. Hosts 2 and 3 are waving at hosts 1, shaking their head.
How about now?
There we go. Welcome back.
I don't understand. I had to switch microphone. My microphone died.
This is what people tune in for.
Right.
Well, so what I was getting ready to say is I came to the realization not too long ago that these conversations we have during these podcasts are the conversations that I wish I could have when I'm at the parties or whatever I go to with my wife or my kids and my family on the weekends, and I'm talking to the other dads, and I want to talk about this stuff, but they don't want to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, no, that'll get you kicked out of a party pretty quickly.
I mean, I think y'all just need to pick better parties. All the parties I go to, we get to talk about cloud stuff.
I don't know how you do that. My wife's friends, husbands, and I cannot talk about this stuff. There's one guy that talks to me about this stuff, and he seems genuinely interested, but at the same time, I think he's just being nice.
Gyra.
Well, I'm also not going to define party or frequency or friends.
Get his hopes up over there. Or he's going to be looking for whatever you're talking about.
You moved to Gyra's neighborhood.
If you only go to parties at cloud conferences, all your parties talk about clouds. So it works.
You keep it up, and I'll put in one of those mysterious showings where you got to get out of the house in 5 minutes.
Hey guys, I'm going to switch back to my other mic. But first, I'm going to ask Gyra a question. Gyra, we left off with this network and storage architecture. You want to try to help us between the picture and the couple paragraphs that are here understand what Nutanix is highlighting for Nutanix clusters on Azure?
Oh, totally. So some of the big takeaways around, quality of life, ease of use, right, are the sort of the simplicity of the way you can integrate a Nutanix cluster into your existing topology. If you already have probably infrastructure deployed running in Azure, you want, or if you need to be able to, relocate VMs there coming from Nutanix cluster to keep on using functionality you're already used to, right? Nutanix Flow, Nutanix Era for like database automation, but you also want maybe cloud adjacency, right? You want close proximity, low latency to get connected to cloud native services, right? We're highlighting here some like, blob storage, other services you can get through Azure, right? Like SQL databases, Azure AD, of course, would only ever run up there. So that kind of cloud adjacency, best of breed cloud access for your VMs that run on Nutanix clusters. That, of course, is all part of the offering, right? Those VMs that run in the cloud can get great access to cloud services. But then the way you get to those also can leverage your existing plumbing, if you will, right? Whether that's express route, whether that's a VPN, however you get to Azure today, that all would apply as well to how you can access these VMs, right? So no need to reinvent wheels there for how would you get to your VMs that run on the Nutanix cluster on Azure.
Well, and that's good for the folks that are adopting this. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, good. Yeah, you guys had that look on your face like he's talking, he's moving, but nothing's coming out. So Jaira, that's really good for those who are new into this world. They don't have to deviate from the Microsoft side of how it works. And then also those that have already established their Azure networking footprint. This is just more the same or similar. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, right. There's no need to blaze a whole new trail on the network side, right? For how do I connect to my VMs that are running on a cluster in Azure.
And this is when I'd actually promote my Azure for Dummies book I bought like a year ago. It is amazingly good at teaching people like me how to do networking in Azure. I was extremely impressed.
That's super cool. And so like all the concepts that you probably take away there, right? Let's see, I'm trying to call to mind some vocabulary. Like a VNet, all that would apply here, right? Like you've already carved out your company's VNets in Azure, right? We can just attach to those.
Yeah, for sure. This also, I think, mentions something about things like flow and other Nutanix oriented stuff. Is that, I guess that's really just extending maybe the on-prem or multiple clouds to each other and making those talk using the built-in networking capabilities of the cloud, in this case, Azure?
So this one refers to flow networking, right? So flow networking is our SDN offering, right? With actual Nutanix managed VPCs on there and subnets. Brand new, launched on AOS 6.0 and will be a part of the Azure clusters. And this mentions the gateway VMs as well that deploy into your Azure VNet. That just covers the connectivity, right, of how your VMs get in and out of the Nutanix cluster.
Okay. Harvey, anything to add?
Sorry, I was kicking little people out of my space here.
Well, I mean, they could chime in. They're probably they're about as expert on this as we are.
No, we are not going to encourage that at all. So no, I guess again, the piece that I would say, which you already kind of brought up, is you're able to use some of the skills you already have on things like Flow or Prism Central and control things that are outside of your on-prem deployment. And really what that means to teams who have a lot of split siloed roles is that when you are deploying this in this way, you don't necessarily have to abide by those same silos. You have the choice. Because your technicians, the administrators have been trained on things like Prism Central or Flow networking will be able to use that knowledge, even if what you're actually using from a VM standpoint resides in Azure. Yeah,
I was on a call, I think it was last week, but yeah, because today's Monday. So with a customer who was saying, I can see the value of being able to target and reuse my automation, right? One of our favorite topics, right? To target Nutanix in this data center, Nutanix in that data center, or Nutanix up in the cloud identically, right? Like,
right.
It's different outcomes, right? Private data center on-prem VMs versus cloud VMs, but the same tooling and automation, right? That you could target any other AOS AHV cluster on-prem also now applies to clusters up in the cloud.
Yeah, I mean, again, IT shops are always tasked to do more with less. And this is definitely a way to do that. If you can consolidate roles and or make it so that you don't have to reskill your team, I mean, that's a win all around.
That's true. Yeah, pretty much zero learning curve, right? When it's a matter of just go to all of our clusters in public clouds, right? At least to date, are built through the portal, right? It's like the MCM tool, and it's like the cluster deployment tool for Nutanix in public clouds. And so that's where you give it your credentials to your cloud tenant, and it just goes and gets the instances that it needs that you're requesting, puts them on the right networks and in the right locations, right availability zones, correct availability zones. And then like 40 minutes later, you have a running cluster. And then it also continues to monitor it. It's got some watchdog functionality to say, is that cluster still online? Is it healthy? Because there's other things to monitor, right? Like at least for AWS, we do this, and I think it would apply to Azure as well. If hardware experiences certain kinds of failure modes, right, the hardware goes offline, we don't wait for that to get healed and someone to come in and lay hands on it. We just request a new node and forget about the old node, right? Fail forward, fail onto new nodes. And so that's a service that you get from that MCM portal, right? The provisioning through the Nutanix portal. That you really can only do in a hardware as a service type of environment, right? You can't do that on-prem unless you just bought a bunch of extra hardware and you sit there doing nothing, ready to provision at a moment's notice, right? So some interesting new capabilities that you get there. Why am I saying this? We're talking about, so the skills, right? But that's all. We've built that automation for you. You simply just, if you know Nutanix, you just say, I want Nutanix cluster in that cloud, done, right? And you already know how to operate it.
Yeah, that's a hardware tech's dream. You get to go, use the hardware, run it as hard as you can, and when it breaks, it's somebody else's problem. Give me a new one.
It's a whole new world, right? It's a whole new world. Like we've heard about those, the cloud hyperscalers that will wait until, I heard one of them had a stat of like they waited till, of course they alternate with great, hot aisle, cold aisle design. And the hot aisles are like you can't walk in there as a human, right? You would cook. They'll wait until they get like 40% failure rates on both sides of that hot aisle, then turn off both aisles, right? And then send people in there, do what they need to do, fix what they need to fix. And it's like, okay, great. Take that hardware delivery model, and now we're going to run persistent Nutanix clusters. How does that work, right? So as we catch those kind of API calls and notifications around this node's going down for maintenance because it's on this aisle, okay, great. We'll handle that for you and make that, a non-event for your Nutanix cluster.
Well, I'd say too, that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily get to see or take advantage of, is that Nutanix does have in it built in some functions around rack awareness and other node awareness and things like that are built in that we might not see a lot of the times.
Yeah, very true.
So the next paragraph, next section talks about maximizing existing investments in Nutanix and Microsoft. Probably pretty transparent, but Jairo, you want to walk us through how you guys see that?
New to me, and it's forward looking, but exciting, right? So the ability to use, do we say, is it that MAC agreement, right? This Microsoft Azure consumption commitment to purchase both the Nutanix software and the Azure, this says infrastructure, really Azure nodes, right? So that's pretty exciting that you will be able to just, use that one, funding vehicle, insert other procurement terms here, to pay for, running the Nutanix software on these Azure nodes. So it makes licensing kind of even more easy.
Yeah, I guess that's news to me. The ability to leverage this and the consumption commitment that you've already made with Microsoft. I guess that's part of it, right?
Yeah, I think we probably have all worked with customers, right, that have committed certain amounts of funding over the next couple of years to Azure spend, and so the ability to say, here's another solution that we can use out of that, piggy bank, makes for even easier consumption.
Yeah, Andy, this is the first part of what you actually wanted in the beginning, where you have a lot of the advantages of running in Azure actually working for you. And you've got, some of the things that around this one, the consumption-based subscription that actually this counts toward. And eventually, they might add other features to it that you normally only have in Azure that you can actually get, in clusters on Azure. Like maybe somebody might want Windows 10 or Windows 11 multi-session or something like that.
Doesn't Windows 10 have a multi-session? I think I've heard about that.
So I was right. I was right all along. Is that what we're saying?
No, I'm saying this is the gateway for you being right. They just need to build more features on it, like the one you want.
That's a stingy consolation there. You're not right. This is just the gateway to you being right.
Yeah,
I could see a path to a world where you might be right from here.
You're not right, but you're gonna be right.
That's pretty harsh, Harvey.
No, that's just Andy being ahead of his time again. That's all.
A visionary. I think we need that. A true visionary.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And yeah, absolutely. A visionary, a dreamer.
Right.
Probably
Somebody's
not the
gotta
only
do
one.
it.
only goes downhill from there though, actually.
No, you got a very strong team helping you execute on those dreams.
All right. Bringing cloud practices on premises with Azure Arc. I have no idea what Azure Arc is. What's Azure Arc?
Azure Arc is the Azure Kubernetes management offering. I'm probably doing that grave disservice here. I'm sure an Arc specialist would tell me I'm wrong in 8 different ways, but the ability to use Arc in one place through Azure to command and control Kubernetes workloads across Kubernetes clusters all over the place, right? And that includes Nutanix Karbon, right? So we can actually use Arc to manage Nutanix Karbon hosted containers, right? So we can deploy. So this applies to both, I would assume, again, forward-looking, like, still in preview offering, but Karbon can run pretty much anywhere that Nutanix AHV can, which is both on-prem and, of course, coming up here in Nutanix clusters in Azure. So then that can then be turned into a Kubernetes cluster and hosted with Karbon there, which is our packaged supported offering of Kubernetes. And then that can then get your workloads orchestrated, deployed via Azure Arc itself. So giving you kind of one place to say, this is where my app architects can go and build their blueprints and deploy their Kubernetes apps, whether that comes to whatever your policies are, right? Dev in the cloud, prod on-prem, or develop on-prem, but then go into production in the cloud. So that kind of a broad landscape visibility through Arc of all your Kubernetes deployments, including ones hosted on Karbon. So again, another sort of common tooling to reach multiple deployments, multiple locations, connected to automation, right? Our favorite topic.
Oh yeah, automation. I'm still getting a hard time about that podcast. People think I'm the anti-automation guy.
I do not support that at all. If you're listening to this, you should be ashamed to not give Andy a hard time about automation.
It came up last week that I hate automation. I don't hate automation. I hate
hates
taking
bad
inefficient
automation.
tasks and automating them.
Yeah.
I think we're all against bad automation.
No bad automation.
We'll get shirts made.
That's a good idea.
Will we design one and have the rest of them made in an automated fashion?
No, that was not
good, Harvey.
We could have the run AHV, don't automate shirt or something.
I think marketing might finally step in and have an opinion on our podcast.
All right. So next section has 4 bullets with it. Hybrid cloud freedom and Nutanix and Microsoft. I think this is a big part of the goal here, right? Is to make it so where you can run what you want, where you want, when you want it.
Absolutely.
Is that what this is?
I'm all about that flexibility.
Kyra, what was the comment you made from .next? Or maybe it was a different comment. I think it was you guys. I think it was you. Like 40% of the workloads that were supposed to go to the cloud have now been determined they won't go to the cloud. Am I making those numbers up?
That there's so many comments. That does sound pretty much accurate. Yeah. The big reduction is the forecasting, right? Rajiv mentioned that in his keynote around, as we ask IT leaders, what do you think will move to the cloud? And that forecast has come way, way down, right? From kind of I'll say the heady days, the early days of saying, oh yeah, I can run 80, 90%, like everything but the mainframe goes to cloud. And that's coming way, way, way down, right? A lot of customers are seeing more and more of an approach of, hey, if this is going to stay a VM, right? And my usual quick and easy question for a customer is, what's the VM run? If it's software that you wrote, that has, what do we say, Harvey? A gateway to being containerized, right? Because if you write the software, you're in charge of that. If that VM is just there to run software that someone else tells you to deploy, right? This is my accounting software. This is my warehouse software. I go in and I run updates on it, but it comes from somewhere else. That probably is never going to be containerized until one day you wake up and they've told you, here's the containerized deployment method for that application, right? And so that has I feel like splashed some reality on the whole, like every single thing that we do, every VM can one day go to cloud. Because if it's going to stay a virtual machine, that one, like let's think about where that's best to run, right? Whether that's going to be cloud native VMs, whether that's going to be clusters on Azure, on-prem VMs, a lot of things, right? Like you mentioned at the top of the podcast, right? A checkpoint router, Andy, and my experience with those, I think, was back in my like Exchange days, right? A skill set that was sort of all let die as that traditional on-prem stodgy application just went from there straight to pure SaaS, right? And you need a heck of a justification now today to run Exchange on-prem because you basically have to run it as well as Microsoft would run it in production to have that be a good value to the business, right? It can be done, but it's a different kind of proposition than the whole like, the way it used to be of I deploy Exchange and I don't touch it for 5 years, and then I do a big migration, and then I come back to it in another 5 years. Right. So sorry, a very long answer to say yes to your question around, forecasted reduction, right, at the cutting edge of what do thought leaders think about what can move to the cloud, and in a not change the packaging, right, keep it as a VM and ship it around. Answer, on-prem is having a resurgence, right? That's why we are going all in on hybrid multi-cloud, right? To say you definitely need to be able to deploy everywhere and have workloads all over the place, right? And key is, as this paragraph highlights, is that agility, right? If it starts one place, how do I get it somewhere else? And that's one thing the clusters makes super easy, right? Is it can go from cloud to on-prem just as easily as it could go from cabinet to cabinet to cabinet in a single on-prem Nutanix data center.
Yeah, and keeping in mind, on-prem might be, Colo might be a partner like us. When you say cloud in this context, you're talking about, public IaaS cloud, and the different variations of hybrid cloud like us or your data center or some edge deployment in one of your warehouses or whatever. Just furthermore example of why you need the flexibility, whether you ever use it or not, who knows?
Yeah. But then as you follow that reality, right, and have the ability to deploy to lots of places, right, lots of parts of your hybrid multi-cloud world, or even as you have done it, right, and you've got apps everywhere, keeping that simplicity at the core of the offering to say, yeah, sure, do I have stuff in like every availability zone known to man because I have different requirements for each one? Yes, but can I see them all in one place? Is it easy to get my arms around? Take my inventory, make sure that everything I've placed in every single zone has good governance and cost controls and justifications, right? And is it right-sized? And am I being a good steward of the resources? That answer, of course, remains yes.
Yeah. Harvey, any additional thoughts on this one?
I mean, honestly, the piece that you asked Jaira about the percentage around the workloads that people thought were going cloud and maybe not, I think that overall probably rejects or projects the reality of what's going on the whole, is that, before cloud was just this really big concept of I can go run everything in the cloud, or I shouldn't do anything in the cloud. And now people are actually getting a real feel for what it actually is, what it actually means, what you can do, what you shouldn't do. Not it's this crazy thing that'll cost me $70 bajillion, because they're running everything and I can't do anything if it breaks. I think now that people have started to have some experience with it, there's lots of realities that come with that. There's lots of hopefully not too hard-earned lessons that come with that. But to Jira's point as well, that gives you kind of the experience and the know-how to be able to get to the point where what we're talking about, where you can run your workloads both wherever and the place where it's best for those workloads to run. Not to the point where you're just putting things out there because you can, more so you're putting things in the right place and running them in the right place from a financial standpoint and a performance standpoint and a resiliency standpoint, to make sure that you're getting what you need out of your environment and being able to host what you need for your end users.
It's almost like it's all about your actual business requirements.
It's weird how it always comes back around to that, doesn't it?
It's true, and it takes a while sometimes, and it's not just about the cool kid doing the coolest thing so he can go get another job somewhere else.
Right. Absolutely.
Or the guy at the cocktail party trying to impress everybody, like I assume people think I am when I'm talking about all this stuff, and they're like, what in the world is he talking about? I'm not trying to impress them. That's just what I want to talk about.
Right.
Well, guys, maybe we should turn this into a cocktail party. It's the last thing we do every Monday. We could start having beers.
That's a plan. That would probably only do good things with the podcast, I have to assume.
My speech is slurred enough as it is, but hey, still could be fun.
That's just that Southern drawl.
Or the mumbles. I get the mumbles plenty too.
Well,
guys, I appreciate you. There you go. See there. I appreciate you guys joining. Our listeners, thank you. Jira, thank you as always. Harvey and I'll be in Philadelphia if you want to come hang out with us the next couple of days. We'll be in the Nutanix Citrix agile booth at EduCause.
Man, fun times.
Yep. Looking forward to seeing everybody there. Every one of the listeners who are there. We'll figure out how to do something special for you if you come let us know you listen.
Yeah, stop by. Hopefully I'll get this published before we get it there.
Yeah, Harvey owes you a shirt.
That's right.
We have shirts.
We can do that. We can do that.
We got to get some more Nutanix shirts printed up. It's been a while, and I need to get back to the I got to get back to the Nutanix logoed shirts. Everybody loves those. Not as much as Run AHV, but they definitely love them. All right, guys. Well, appreciate it. Another Monday in the books, and we'll do it again next week.
Cool. Talk to y'all.
Good.